Alrighty. Hopefully we're live. You're listening to ACAB Radio. I'm your host Jay Leifer, King Ron, Kelly Special K Patterson. This is episode 29 of ACAB Radio. Got a good show for you guys today. A lot to talk about. These cops just can't stay out of the news, really. We got an article from the RJ about this woman who was since been released from the Women's Correctional Facility. It's Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center. And she just pretty much blew the whistle on the conditions there. There's a good video on the RJ's website where they interviewed this lady.
Well, I mean, they just interviewed her. People have been blowing the whistle for a very long time. If you've known anybody who's been in the correctional facility, they'll tell you tons of stories. So I don't know why this, all of a sudden they decide to, to do it. I'm glad that they do, but, I wonder why it took so long.
This is something that's also like a national story. All the prisons are overcrowded and under-maintained. Mm-hmm. But Las Vegas, I don't know what it compares, to other major cities. Not Las Vegas, but Nevada. I don't know what it compares to, like Los Angeles area jails and stuff like that. But up in Reno, I think they've had 6 people die within the past 2 years, and I know there's one video where they're literally killing a guy. So there's a particular problem in Nevada of they also had the 2 people, which I did a story on, where they basically made sure that they were in the hallway going to the showers at the same time, even though they had a previous history and were supposed to be separated.
Right.
And they were getting inmates to fight each other. And then they were using shotguns to shoot the inmates once they were fighting.
Right, and they're supposed to separate out different gangs. I know when I was arrested, that was one of the things that they asked me about was, gang affiliations. Is there anybody here who might want to hurt you or doesn't like you to keep me from being put in the same cell or the same area as them? So.
Yeah, and it's also not limited to prisons because the jails here are completely overcrowded. When I was in there for that chalk bullshit, they had a room that was set up for 10 people, and they had 30 people in it. There wasn't even enough room to sit on the benches, let alone lay down. And people were trying to sleep on the floors, and even then it was too crowded. There, you had to fight for a little bit of space, even just to lay on the filthy floor.
Right, and I know that there were some issues with the women's while they were in jail, getting proper hygiene.
And being sexually harassed and
that's true.
Assaulted.
But, they weren't even providing them with the basic necessities.
Yeah. That's some of the things she mentioned. She said systematic abuse by guards, medical staff. One woman had a botched eye surgery and lost some of her vision. Denied proper care. Inmates aren't tested or treated for Hep C. There's just rampant misconduct and sexism, because she says that in the lawsuit that there's programs that are available to men in prison that aren't available for women, especially aging, like for elderly people who are incarcerated. There's special programs for men that aren't available for women. So she brings up some great points. And
there was also a case here that had a lawsuit involved with it, where they took a woman to the hospital because she was in labor, and they kept her handcuffed to the stretcher. And I know someone that was in jail, and they told me a story about how there was a woman in the Clark County Detention Center who went into labor while she was in a holding cell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those holding cells there, they have a button that you can push that's supposed to call the guards, but the guards don't respond to it. So basically, they're supposed to come around once every hour and look through the window and make sure nobody's injured or fighting,
like
or
a
all
wellness check.
Right.
But like if you have some kind of medical issue 5 minutes after they leave,
you're fucked.
You're there to the next hour.
And also, but there's also been reports of, if you're diabetic and need, diabetic medicine or insulin or whatever, you have to wait. And I was told for some of the prescriptions that you need, it can be a 3-day wait. So if you're taking something, I'm not sure if that applies to antipsychotics and things like that. If you have to wait 3 days, you go from being able to function to not being able to function at all.
Right.
And that creates a lot more issues for you. And it's because it takes 3 days.
They don't give people their medication. When I was in jail for the chalking shit, there was a person there that was diabetic, and they said, I'm afraid that I'm going to have a diabetic episode, and they asked them to give them sugar packets, and they refused to do that. So basically, that person could have went into diabetic shock, and it would have been at the minimum an hour before somebody knew that they were there.
Yeah, this is...
that issue. They could be dead by then.
It's a barbaric system. I mean, it's... you read about the stuff from, the Middle Ages when people would be put into friggin', dungeons, and this is the modern day dungeons.
Yeah, look, it's like a dungeon. Look how many people they got piled in here. This is a cell for 12 females. So there's a bunk starting on the right, one bunk, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one on the left. 6.
And that's because that's how many bunks they could fit in there. It was probably intended for like 3 people.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's just crazy that they have people living like that. Thankfully for this woman who can, speak out and tell the story for all the women who are incarcerated that don't have a voice,
And the reason that's happening is because the government, and especially private prisons, are making a profit off
they're
of
the worst,
incarcerating people.
Right.
So
If you don't know about private prisons, there's a lot of shows. You can look on YouTube or Google, and I think Adam Ruins Everything actually also did an episode.
Yeah, I saw that. That was good.
On this issue, and it really should wake you up. And if you're not aware, you should be aware.
Yeah, it's private industrial prison complex. Yeah, if you guys want to move on, the next one is an RJ article. So, at the end of the last episode, I said I was going to go out and share food with the homeless over on Fourmaster because we heard about a crackdown that was going down. So I went up there with a buddy of mine, and the cops showed up, harassed us, threatened us, and eventually gave me a citation.
And the main cop that's in that video, the guy on the right, the bald guy, is a member of the MORE team, which is supposedly people that go out and help homeless people.
Right. I think did we do a story about them? I think
we did when we did Coffee with a Cop before. We talked to them.
Yeah,
and
I
told
talked
us how wonderful it is. It's probably that guy that we talked to.
Yeah.
Or tried to talk to, but they avoided us.
And then they came to the park one time while we were serving.
That same day.
Yep, and I spoke with them there. What can I say? You see what they do.
So the thing is that for people that aren't familiar with the area, the reason that people congregate to Fourmaster in Maine is because that's where the Starvation Army and Catholic Charities and other
the courtyard
government-approved services are.
Right.
But there's certain people that they won't let in.
Or ineligible for.
Won't actually give shelter to for various reasons. So they stay there because it's within distance of the food distribution areas.
If you need to eat, and they're able to get it.
And so basically they're saying that they want to help homeless people, but they're excluding certain people.
Yep.
And then they're cracking down on the people that want to close that gap and help those people that can't be helped or won't be helped by.
Now the thing that's important here too is when we say, well, there's certain people, it's not just a couple, it's not just a few. There's dozens upon dozens of people who are sleeping outside of those facilities. A lot of times we hear, well, you shouldn't be serving people food in the park because it stops them from getting other services that are available. And this proves that it's not so. If they had services available to them, they would take them. There wouldn't be a need for them to be stacked up too deep, block after block, on the street in this weather. And if there was facilities, there's not enough beds, there's not enough facilities. They refuse certain people. So in that crowded area, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't want to be, the best way I could describe it is like being at the mall at Christmas time. People are shoulder to shoulder, throngs of people crushed together. It's very uncomfortable. There's no space. You can't breathe. You really, and there's no guarantee that you will be getting help.
Yeah.
So.
And that whole false argument that you brought up, that frankly, these homeless haters use that argument that say, well, don't give them a blanket. There was a press conference that commissioner just gave saying, don't give them a blanket, don't give them water, because you're going to stop them from getting other services. So that's a false argument that we need to look at real quick. So especially when we go down to Four Master and we're distributing there where all the services are, so you can literally watch somebody get coffee from me and then walk back into the courtyard. So this isn't stopping them from getting any services. So that argument needs to die. That argument's got to go away because it's just not logical and it's not true.
Right. And if these people, if there were all these services, they wouldn't need to be sleeping shoulder to shoulder, too deep, block after block.
Yeah.
They would be housed indoors with plumbing and, bathrooms and access to water, medical supplies if they need it, or...
Yeah, which they just don't have the resources.
And on top of that, the issue is the courtyard they claim that's there to help homeless people or to help people in need. And, they've went and painted all the sidewalks red.
They created a situation
make
to
it
just...
non-parking zone.
Exactly.
But meanwhile, the courtyard has a giant parking lot, and
Yeah.
homeless people don't have cars, so they don't need to park there.
Yeah,
So-
and it's empty. It's empty all the
So it's an
time.
empty parking lot that's sitting there unused, and they're complaining that people that come down and help homeless people are creating a traffic hazard by parking in these areas that they deemed
Yeah.
non-parking zones for no reason
It's
except that they
ridiculous.
don't want people to come by and help the homeless people.
Yeah.
So if the courtyard really wanted to help people and this was an actual concern about people blocking traffic, even though the only people really using Fort Master and Main, it's a very small street right there.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that really come down there are people that are either homeless and don't have cars, or people that are trying to distribute food to the homeless.
Or cops that come to stop
Right.
people who are helping.
So the courtyard could open up that parking lot. People could park there. They could go up on the sidewalk
It's
on
an
the
easy
street
fix, yeah.
and hand out food.
Yep,
But
it's that simple.
the intention is to stop people from helping homeless people unless it's a government-approved program.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a shame, and they claim it's about public safety, but there's no fire hydrant there. We weren't blocking a fire
listen.
hydrant. The whole street is painted red.
If they were worried about public safety, there's a public health issue when you have, it looked like, a displaced persons camp. Sometimes you see, like in war-torn regions, when people flee over the border and the countries that they're fleeing to don't want them, so they'll just pack them into these small fenced-in areas. So I'm sure, if anybody has pneumonia or some sort of viral infection, it'll just jump from person to person by keeping them packed in without facilities to wash their hands or to, any sort of hygiene. So they are really the ones creating a public health issue by keeping the people packed in the way they do and not offering them services. And they do that intentionally because there's other areas they could spread out a little bit. But what they do is they come along, police cars, marshals, and garbage trucks. And they come and they go through and they'll just sweep wherever they are. And anything that's on the sidewalk is gone into that dumpster. We're talking tents, sleeping bags, blankets, medicines, their bags, their belongings, whatever they own, man.
That same-
just gets
Well, they come
thrown
by and they
right
give
in.
them 5 minutes to get everything that they own.
And if they're there, if they're not
Whatever
out
they don't-
eating.
Yeah, whatever they don't gets thrown into a dumpster.
Yeah,
ID.
that same sign that says no parking, right above it, it says this area is subject to sweeps without notice. So sometimes they'll come and they won't even give people a heads up, and yeah, you're right, people lose their whole
And
life,
one of
their
the
whole belongings.
one of the big issues with homeless people is losing their ID, and that's a very common way that they lose their ID is that they come by with these sweeps and they take everything that they own and throw it in the garbage.
Right. And we're talking, IDs can be replaced. They
And they-
also take away family photos.
And they also come out to the
And
parks and they
is-
specifically take blankets and tents and those sort of things that people need, and they do this during the winter.
In the winter.
when people can die from exposure from the cold, because Las Vegas is a desert, and even though it's 120 degrees in the summer, when it drops down to 50 degrees in the winter, that's a 70 degrees different.
Yeah.
And
So
it drops down below 50.
you know, it might not seem cold to somebody who's in Chicago, but if you're used to 120 degree temperature, 50 degrees is enough. You know, and sometimes it does drop down to 40 or 30 degrees overnight.
And that's enough. 2 years ago, we actually lost one of our people to exposure in the park because it was winter and it was cold.
Yep.
You can die of hypothermia in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
It
I've
gets,
known the
it
person.
gets below
and it's-
freezing at night for sure.
Well,
Some
it doesn't
nights.
need to be below freezing. It just needs to be cold enough where your body can't recover. So it
Yeah.
doesn't need to snow. It doesn't need to rain. You don't have to be wet.
Yeah.
You just have to, traditionally, or more than likely, a lot of times people who are homeless aren't getting the best nutrition. So they're already at risk. They're being a little weaker. Their immune systems are a little weaker. And it just takes that little push sometimes to put them over the edge and to
Yeah.
rob them of their life. And this is what the police encourage, is not to give them blankets or food or socks.
Yeah, it's
So-
ridiculous. So we got an article coming out possibly tonight, maybe tomorrow, getting more in depth on this issue. But we're going to move on to another local story. Metro strikes again. They shot and killed somebody else. This is officer-involved shooting 22, just happened the other day, so there's not many details out. But yeah, the details that have been released are just already sounds like it's going to be a
Well, there's some inconsistencies because
like always, yeah.
for one thing, they say that he was reaching for something bulky on his waistband, which, if that's even true, like, what does that even mean? And it's going to be interesting when they have this video, because more than likely, even if he's reaching for something, they already have their gun trained on him. So if he started to pull out something that was a weapon, they could easily shoot him. But then the other thing is, they say right after that, then he charged the officers. But before they say that, they're like, well, then the officer grabbed him and held him and tased him, and then he charged the officer. So if he's already grabbing him, how is he charging the officer? And then if he's pulling something bulky off his belt that they think is a gun, then why are they wrestling with him? So obviously they knew he didn't have a gun at some point at that time.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's one of those things where, like, it just doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's one of those things where it's going to be another changing story once they actually come out with the video.
Yeah.
Right.
Which will probably be tomorrow, because they always make sure it's not before our show. Not that I'm saying that's by intention, but it might be by intention. But
Yeah. So they've already passed last year. They've killed more people than last year, shot and injured more people than last year, and
they're
We
shooting
still
for
have
the
a few
record.
more
I think the
weeks.
record's 25, and they're on 22 now.
yeah, they're
And we still
almost
got a
there.
couple weeks, right? 3
Yeah.
weeks left.
And they did, a couple years ago, they were lagging behind a little bit, and then they shot like 4 people within December. So
Right. So we know that they could make their numbers when they need to.
Yeah, so they
they could step up.
got to get that rush in.
Yeah.
Yep, just in time for the holidays.
Yeah. Ruin a lot of families'
So this-
Christmases.
This particular incident, they already admitted that they have body cam, so as soon as that's released, probably be
If it didn't stop
after the
recording
show. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
before.
Or they don't lose it or it gets corrupted.
So we have a quick clip here. This isn't
Yeah,
the body
Jackie,
cam.
that's exactly what happened after police officers reviewed that officer's body cam footage. The officer had stopped that driver for recklessly driving and before trying to make an arrest, it ended deadly.
So another traffic stop.
This is
Turned
video that
deadly,
shows
thanks to
Metro
Metro.
Police responding to the officer-involved shooting. It happened just before 8 a.m. on Sunrise and 18th.
Our officer requested that the driver exit the vehicle, at which time he did. The subject began reaching for a large bulky item on his waistband.
Metro Police says body cam footage shows the officer asking what that item was. That video hasn't been released yet.
The subject did not comply. Our officer
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. Comply or die over a traffic stop.
And even when you do comply, you die. There's no, you cannot win.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Every time someone runs from the police, this is the reason that they run, because they know even if you comply, there's a good chance you're going to wind up at the fucking wrong end of a bullet from a police officer's gun.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to pick and choose which way you think you're going to be the safest.
Well, I mean, I wish I had my camera with me right now, because I had like the housing on my GoPro broke, and I specifically bought a new one, and I bought one that's colored red, so they can't
don't
be
mistake it as a gun.
yeah, so then they can't be like he's pulling something dark out.
Something big and bulky.
Yeah, from my
You
something
think-
bulky from my waistband.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, if you really think
Which-
that's going to keep you safe, they'll.
first of all, that's
You
a
know.
fucking porno movie. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, well, if you watch that clip, like she says like 3 or 4 things that are like that are inconsistent with what she's already said.
Correct.
Like she changes within the space of like one quote, she changes the story. So it's one of those things where it's going to be something completely different. But like I said, if he's pulling something out of his belt, then the cop's fighting with him, and then there's a taser, and then so it doesn't even make any sense that they had to shoot him.
Never makes sense the majority of the time. It's
It
that
certainly
they're trying to
does.
get the numbers.
It certainly wasn't because he was armed, because you're not wrestling with a guy if you think he has a gun.
Yeah. And if it was a gun, they would have said that the guy had a gun. So it obviously wasn't a gun. It's some
Right.
bulky item. Who knows what it was? Probably
Yeah.
going to be his cell phone.
It was probably his
Something
wallet,
ridiculous.
so he could show him his ID.
Yeah.
Or
So
is
we'll
that,
see.
you know,
Time will
oxygen
tell.
concentrator.
Yeah, time will tell. We'll see.
Yeah.
So the next story here. This one I wanted to bring up because it reminds me of the Tashi Brown case. This was a guy who died in police custody. He went to the police for help, and when he was taken into custody, he was hogtied, and that was actually listed as the cause of death, and it was ruled a homicide.
Well, one of the things about that, homicide just means that it wasn't natural causes. So the coroner saying this was a homicide doesn't mean that he's implicating the cops.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right, they could
he's
say he
just
had an
saying-
enlarged heart. He could have.
Yeah,
so
that's why I wanted to bring it up, because that's what the media and the police are already saying was, well, there were contributing factors that the coroner said that, hardened arteries,
Listen,
and
he
he was on
he
ecstasy.
happened to have a heart attack
so
at the same time that
Exactly.
that
Right.
cop was punching him in the back of the head.
yeah, so they slandered him the same way they did Tashi,
And
saying,
By the way, the guy who they shot in the mall, they came back. The family went and had an independent autopsy. And
This
they
is
found
interesting.
They shot him 3 times in the back.
In the
Yeah.
back.
yeah,
So-
I saw that.
Yeah.
So that whole thing that he was brandishing a gun as he ran toward the cops is a complete fabrication.
Yeah, they need to
And-
release that footage.
Yeah, they haven't
already.
come out with that video yet, and they won't. That's one of those ones where they'll fight it for 2 years before they actually come out with the video.
Yeah,
How low can you get shooting people in the back?
it's
What a
crazy.
cowardly
But that's
act.
that's the fallback thing for the cops also. Like in this
Cowards.
case where they said, well, we choked him, but he was out of shape anyway, so he would have died.
Yeah, that's what they said with Tashi. They choked him, but
Yeah.
it was his arteries and the meth in his system. So it's like same thing with this guy. He had ecstasy in his system, and he just happened to die while
Yeah.
being hogtied by
Nice.
police, and it's not the police's fault.
Big coincidence.
It's the ecstasy.
It's,
It's
holy
it's
Christ.
his veins. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I haven't seen.
I shot the guy, but he was in the middle of having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And I watched the video, and like he was coming to the police saying, "I need help. I need help." Like,
We know.
That's the last people you want to
yeah, I don't know. What
That's a good
people are
lesson to
gonna
learn, folks.
Yeah, I just feel bad for the family, man. It's on an interview with them, and it's got to be rough.
And if you notice, there's a commonality of complexion amongst all these stories, and that's if you have that commonality, do not go to the cops for help.
Yeah.
All that stuff that your parents told you,
Or what they tell you in school.
10 or 20 years ago about going to the cops when you're in trouble, fucking throw that right out the window.
Yeah, it's almost like a death sentence, asking them for help.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it is a death sentence.
So this was an interesting article here. I actually pulled this from like a pro-police website. So they were all heartbroken that their drug task force helicopter crashed and everybody died on board.
Was did they drug test the pilot?
They
of
should
that because he
because
might have been on ecstasy or methamphetamine. I mean, how do you crash a helicopter?
well, the thing is, they
Mm.
should have tested him because this dude, it's come out that he's crashed a plane before this and he survived. And now he crashed a helicopter.
Did he survive this one? No, everybody
No,
everybody on
everybody.
board. That's including him.
Well,
Yeah.
Hey,
over the past like 6 months since Metro got their fancy new helicopter, they've been flying over downtown every fucking day, day in and day out, all day long. And at night they shine their fucking spotlight into people's backyards, trying to,
Yeah.
I don't know, trying to find a dog that's barking too loud or something. And Metro has crashed their helicopter in a fucking neighborhood in downtown, and I'm waiting for that new one to crash now.
Yeah,
So
who knows?
I hope they
Hopefully
crash
not.
on my street so I can go out and laugh at them.
Hopefully it's not, on somebody's house.
yeah. I wonder if this
Um,
guy did it intentionally.
I don't know. All the
Like
details
I can't
got.
take this fucking task force anymore. These guys, they won't shut their fucking mouths. What racist pricks? We'll just finish this now.
Yeah, it said he hit a line or a power line or something, and then ended up in a river. So
What
who
the f-
knows? But yeah, everybody died on board.
Jesus.
So hey, if you don't want like cops dying in helicopter crashes and the drug war, and you won't have task force flying,
Right.
helicopters paid for by tax dollars so that they can,
Probably
try to
not.
arrest people for victimless crimes.
Right.
Probably knocked out people's power too.
True. Well,
Like
and
sitting
please
down.
remember, when you see this, it's the Georgia Narcotics Task Force pork chopper crash is killing everybody on board. So
Yeah, pretty crazy.
that's it, man. Pork choppers. Can't take them.
The other story we got for you guys was another police crash, and they just do the same thing that they always do. This was, I believe, a highway patrol unit. The guy was speeding, looking down at his, cop computer, and he admitted to it. He's like, I was speeding, I was distracted, and he killed this woman. So what do? Oh, well, the woman was on drugs. She had meth in her system. Just totally slander her to turn the argument into, well, maybe it was her fault. Maybe she was
Right.
high and running through the streets, or maybe.
Incriminating the victim.
And then you
and
don't
not
feel
holding.
sorry for a meth head who's dead, and you don't want a cop to get in trouble.
If she hadn't
when
done
they
meth,
spin it
that
like
cop
that.
wouldn't have flown up on the sidewalk and
Yeah.
hit her.
It's crazy, man. I just watching them how they spin it, just fucking.
I heard that
crazy.
she smoked 3 packs a day too.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually. I mean, it was the car crash
And-
was extenuating circumstances. She had lung cancer or hardened arteries, so it wasn't the total cause of her death. These fucking guys they're horrible human beings for even insinuating with a case like this and trying to blame the victim.
Yeah.
They're disgraceful. Disgraceful.
You think that's bad? It's about to get a whole lot worse, folks. And this
Well-
isn't the first time that this has
well,
happened.
One thing is, though, also there was a case here in Vegas that was pretty well known at the time. It's been maybe 5 years now, so it might not be as well known. But there was a guy who was on a street and he was getting ready to make a left turn, and the cops were flying to this call, and they never actually said what the call was. So I don't even know if it was something important or not, but. They were flying at like 100 miles an hour with no lights on. And because the guy misjudged their speed, he turned in front of them and they fucking wrecked
Creamed him.
him. And they charged him with drunk driving, and it came out later that he hadn't even been drinking. But they smeared him on the news. It was to the point that the people from Channel 3 actually apologized on the air about their coverage of it. It was so egregious and bad.
Listen, you can't trust anything the police say. They prove it time and time again. They're trained liars.
So we didn't even know for sure if she was
So-
actually on meth.
Right. I mean, it's safer to, whenever the police say anything, is to be like, you know what, they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
And more likely than not, you will be correct in that assessment that what they're saying is lies and manipulation. So,
Yeah. I was actually going to work the other day, and there was I guess it was like a month ago now, but a cop on the Flamingo exit had ran into a limo. The limo burst into flames, and I saw these cops,
Yeah.
and I'm like, man, I wanted to get out and film because something was going down, but I had to
Right.
be to work. And it turned out, it was an officer who
By
was
the way,
involved in the crash. That's why there were so many officers out there.
To protect their own.
Yeah.
And the cop was at fault.
Right.
Yeah, I remember
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But the other thing about that is what the fuck is going on with these limos that like they get in an accident and they explode?
Burst into
Yeah,
flames.
You
that,
know, it's
there
like
was
a fucking
one.
Simpsons episode.
It's
or
all the
something.
liquor on
The
board.
board. Well,
Yes.
because there was that one that happened on, was it Fremont or Main Street? Like,
With the one with the rapper guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
That was the same shit. They exploded. There was one in New York where that fucking blew up and killed like 30 people.
You know, I always thought that was like movies. You always see the limos with the.
I say it's like a
the
Simpsons
guys.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they throw a rock at it and it explodes. I'm just saying.
All right, we'll get into this one now. Yeah, this is. Didn't this happen out here as well? Wasn't there
Yeah.
Well-
a scandal with the Explorer program?
The Explorers in general seem to be like a fucking hunting ground for pedophile cops.
Well, they bring in young children.
Yeah.
So.
And then they put pedophiles in charge of them.
Yeah, I see a correlation with the church because it's just like in church, people look up to these priests. You know, they're just the best kind of people. I want to be like Father so-and-so. And it's like these kids in these programs have been raised to idolize police. And it's like, man, I really want to be like this guy when I grow up.
Well, that's
Until,
the parents' fault for not letting them, look at cop block pages and watch ACAB radio. If the children watched and saw, they would know what predators these pigs are.
Yeah.
You know, it's the parents' responsibility to educate your children, about the pigs and what they do.
so-
Unfortunately, this is what happens when you don't.
Are the two photos that are with this mugshots, or are they just photos?
I'm assuming these are the two officers.
Because the guy on the left is smiling awfully wide for a guy that got busted for molesting kids.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably still happy about
Yeah.
that.
And he knows he's going to get off. His buddy will cover for him.
Yep.
But yeah, and specifically in Las Vegas, there's been, I think, 2 incidents of police officers that were caught molesting members of the Explorers. And then there was one of the Explorers who was, I think, 19 at the time. He was just convicted within the past year. And he was basically dating this 12-year-old girl. He was walking around and introducing her as his girlfriend, even though she was only 12 years old. And this was during, Explorer activities, and none of these cops reported him.
That's
There's
crazy.
actually speculation that he had done something or had some kind of information that they wanted to set him up, and that's why he finally got busted, because they turned him in. I don't know
Crazy.
I don't know how accurate that is, or if it's just something that they put up as try to defend him. But yeah, he was just sentenced within, I think, the past 6 months, and that's basically, he was publicly walking around with this girl that was like 12 years old, saying that
Right.
she was his girlfriend, and I think he was 17 at the time, because it took a little while before he got the, to go through the trial and everything. But he's doing this right in front of the cops running the Explorers. And,
Right.
and nobody
And
said, why is
that's
this, 17-year-old guy walking around with a 12-year-old?
Listen, parents, please educate your children not to, bow down and kowtow to figures of authority, whether it be priests or police officers or teachers. Teach your children to think for themselves and to trust their instincts. You have predators out there in the communities in positions of power, and it's your job as a parent to make sure you educate your children as best as possible.
Absolutely.
We don't want to see your name up here, or you having to go through this horrible situation.
So here's some of the details of this case in particular. The guy on the left, that's Kenneth Betts, and the guy on the right is Brandon Wood. So they were charged with all kinds of stuff, from distributing, possession, transferring, lewd photos to minors, possession of child pornography, distribution of child pornography, enticement, I don't know what that is, attempted enticement, among others. And this had been going on, I guess, since the first year that this dude was with the police. This was back in 2006, all the way up until 2016. And there's 2 counts of sodomy with 2 different teen victims that were in this Explorer program. And that's not the end of it. They also falsified reports, deleted phone records, and audio files and other records were also destroyed, trying to cover their tracks.
Yeah, enticement is like the layman's term for that. Basically, is grooming, but that's basically they're trying to entice children into.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, just crazy.
And they didn't do anything until it got so egregious and so out there that the police couldn't cover up for these guys any longer.
Yeah. This ties into the next story. So if you think this is an isolated incident, hopefully after listening to us for a while, you'll realize that every single week, every episode, it seems like we have a pedophile cop or a rapist cop.
Hey, well, let me fucking put it this way. You know, I know these bad things happen, but, you know, they catch these fuckers. They catch these fuckers, and you know that there's justice being meted out, right? They get what's fucking due to them.
Well, I don't know, man. Look at this guy. So
Oh, wait.
That brings us to our next
Because
story.
we'll be following that last case, and it'll end up a lot like this one.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, so there's this guy. He got sentenced to 90 days. 90
Oh,
days.
there we go. So justice is metered out. Fuck. So, yeah, even when they are caught, folks, molesting your children, raping your neighbors, raping your family,
And
this is the justice
I
that
don't know
you
the
receive.
terms of the sentence, but typically when you get good time and all that, you get a third
Yeah,
of the actual sentence. So he's probably there for a month.
Yeah, a month or 2 tops, if he behaves himself.
And he's probably, when he got arrested, if they didn't give him bail that day, which happens a lot with the cops, but generally, you know, they would give him time served and he wouldn't even do the 90 days.
Is he still on the force? That doesn't say ex-Colorado police officer.
Dude, look at this dude. Like, he looks like a pedophile, bro. Like, I wouldn't have hired him just because he looks like a pedo. But this is Curtis Lee Argenbright.
Well, then you got to eliminate like half the cops
Yeah.
in the country. So
I mean, that's what people need to realize is that these positions of power, when you allow cops to get away with everything, it's going to attract people to those positions that are psychopaths that know that once they get that shiny badge that it's a license to kill, it's a license to rape, you get away with anything.
well,
And they know they have backup. The thin blue line and the police
Well-
union does everything in its power to protect criminal cops continuously. They do it.
Well, and that's one of the go-to arguments that the cops or the cop lovers like to make against us is we're preventing people that are good cops from joining the force by besmirching, you know, the reputation of the cops.
Oh, Lord.
Reality is they're attracting bad cops by letting people get away with these sort of
Exactly.
That's
things.
right. By not holding them accountable.
Where's all the good cops? Yeah, where's all the
Well,
good cops speaking
and
out?
When you don't
Us publicizing this stuff they're doing is
Right.
us doing something anyway.
listen, our job is to hold the police accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
Right? You do something wrong, you should be held accountable. And you shouldn't be having people backing you up. You shouldn't have a police union backing you up. You shouldn't have your brothers in blue backing you up when you're an out and out like sexual predator.
Yeah.
Like this.
Helping them cover their tracks or intimidate witnesses.
And you can
It's-
also look up when the sheriff of Austin, Texas, who's now it's Art Acevedo, I believe is his name. I'm not sure if that's the exact name because, you know, I'm from Vegas, so I don't keep up on Austin police. But he's now the police chief in Houston.
Mhm.
There was that case where there was the jogger who ran across the street and they grabbed her for jaywalking, and basically like she was like sitting there crying because they were treating her so bad. And he did a press conference and basically said, "Well, she's lucky she didn't get raped."
That's
You
crazy.
know, so that's the mindset of the police, of the
Yeah.
police chief, you know,
Wow.
of a major city.
That's crazy.
And the fish stinks from the head down.
Yeah.
So, when you have the corruption at the top levels, man, it just trickles right on down to the rank and file.
But I'm sure this is an isolated incident, right?
You would think,
there's-
because these are police officers, right?
Well, there was a recent university study that from 2005 to 2013, police were charged with rape over 400 times.
What?
Yeah, but that's just
And
statutory
there was
rape.
also the cop who was in the hallway for an hour and a half during the Las Vegas shooting who was molesting his stepdaughter.
Yep.
And
That article's on Cop
the
Block.
other police went on the police
database.
and tried to help him track her down so he can intimidate her into not
Yeah.
testifying when he found out that they were investigating him.
Yep. Definitely check that story out on NV Cop Block. I forget the officer's name, but if you just do a
And-
quick search of
He was one of the 2 cops within a 1-week period that was in an armed standoff.
yeah, where
Right.
SWAT got called out. Yeah, I remember that.
One thing to remember is that these, police officers, these pigs, are caught on a usually on a single incident. It's not the first time that they did this. They know that people don't get caught the first time they
Yeah.
commit a crime. It's they do it time and time again, and they get bolder and bolder
Mhm.
as they do it more often. So you see him get caught for this one, but you don't know how many people in the past this happened to. This isn't his first time.
It's
So-
crazy though that he's given her a ride home from the hospital, right? He
Right.
forces himself on her, handcuffs her, like it's disgusting, man.
Well, speaking just as a fellow human being, if you're taking somebody home from the hospital that's in distress, and then you sexually assault them, you're the lowest form of life that they could possibly be. You're taking advantage of someone who's at their most vulnerable, and that makes you a real piece of shit.
You know what? You know who else is a piece of shit? Newsweek. Because look at how they framed this headline: forced handcuff woman. He was taken home from hospital into sex. Like nowhere in the headline does it
Instead
say
of
he
saying-
raped her.
Yeah, instead
Right.
of saying raping woman.
Forced, and then all these words into sex.
Well,
That's not sex, bro.
but
Like,
also-
why do you even word it like that?
That's right.
It's
You know,
crazy.
earlier this year there was the case with the NYPD where they had I think she was a 16-year-old girl. She was underage. They had like 2 cops raped her, and then 3 cops showed up from the NYPD at her hospital room and tried to intimidate her into not pressing charges. And then they turned around and said that she was consensual. And
That's crazy.
Listen, you know what the police are. You know what they are.
Yeah.
These pigs are pigs, and they're called pigs for a reason.
Yeah.
I shake my head. I'm flawed, and I still see people who defend this type of behavior. There's those copsuckers out there who will make excuses.
Yeah. They just
I guess
love-
until it happens to their family, and then maybe they'll see the light. But I don't wish that on them. I wish they can learn from other people's tragedy and their suffering, and call it out for what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, over 400 times police have been charged with rape from 2005 until 2013.
And that's the
Um,
ones that were charged.
Yeah, so that's 8-year
Or-
period. So I don't know what that averages out to, over 400, and that's only statutory rape. So that doesn't include all these pedophiles that we've been talking about every week, that the news doesn't talk about.
And rape in general is incredibly underreported.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
When you've got the police and they're the ones investigating, they're the ones that often intimidate the victims of other police.
so
Right.
a lot don't come
And-
forward. Yeah.
And you
Just
have
like
to,
domestic violence,
Same thing, yeah.
yep,
the reported cases are 2 to 4 times as much as the regular.
population. I think it's
Population.
50% of police officers
Beat their wives.
beat their wives.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing
That's how
that
many are reported.
right, and one other thing that they don't mention. Well, not that they've got comprehensive about this, but I have reports also. The police will harass sex workers and get freebies, and the homeless. And for sex acts, they won't be run through the system. They won't be arrested. They won't be ticketed. So they also go out and prey on the vulnerable people in our communities who, really can't, defend themselves. And I've heard from multiple people that this has happened. I'm sure there's statistics out there, so you can look it up.
Yep. I think we got one more story here if I can pull it up. Uh-oh. Hope it didn't freeze.
Let what we said sink into the people. If you're out there listening,
Maybe Facebook is nervous.
Nah.
It's freezing up.
That's what I'm saying.
Here we go. Okay. Dude, why'd you shoot me? So there was this guy. This was, I believe, in Georgia, but in trying to find a picture of the victim who was shot by police, like there's just so many stories of officers claiming that they mistook their taser for their gun and shot the guy. Oh, I thought I was using my taser. Like there are so many stories out there
And
where they say that. It's unbelievable.
the thing about that is that you have to, well, first of all, the tasers are designed to feel different than the guns so that you
Right.
don't make that mistake.
Yeah.
They look different.
Police
they
are
feel different. They
also-
weigh different.
The,
Mhm.
the procedure for the police is to wear them on the other side of their belt so that they don't make that mistake.
Yeah, it's a lie.
Tasers
It's a
have to be
bullshit
charged
excuse.
before you can use them. So the idea that you're pulling out your taser and just shooting it
Listen.
is not a reality.
How many
So
times-
It's nothing but an excuse. It's
Right.
an excuse when they murdered
a
Oscar
lie.
Grant
Listen.
in Oakland,
Right.
using that as an excuse. And
Listen,
it's an
I could reach
excuse.
into my pocket and I could pull out a nickel, knowing it's a nickel and not a quarter or a dime. You know, and you can't tell me that these cops didn't know from the feel of their gun, the weight, and everything else. It's
Yeah.
disgusting. I
No,
mean,
it's a
they
Nobody
lie
buys
and then
this
they.
shit.
Well, we'll see what the jury says. You know, if it gets to that, if he's charged with the. So what was the?
So he, I think he was suspended. He hasn't been charged with anything or
Was it one of
fired
those
even.
paid vacations.
I
or-
think it. Well, I think it was a month, I believe, and then but a week of it wasn't paid.
And he,
What?
Yeah.
well, and I'm sure
So he had to cash in his vacation pay
right, I'm
or
sure he covered, I'm
holiday
sure he
pay?
covered that with vacation time, so he
Yeah.
didn't lose anything.
Did they do a GoFundMe for him?
The story's crazy on this. So okay, first of all, the victim here, who's the guy who was shot by police, he was at a bank ATM machine trying to withdraw $500,000 from an ATM machine at a bank that he didn't have an account for. So that was kind of funny, but so the
Was he
cops show
successful?
up. No,
Okay,
it was
just
not.
checking.
If he was, I was going to say what bank is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a Santander bank,
I
and
found a new way to
they're
fund the
giving
show.
away $500,000.
Yeah.
You got to give people credit for trying. You don't know till you
Hey.
try.
Right, worst thing that's going to happen is they're
Right.
going to say no.
Right. Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
So cops show up. They end up arresting him, cuff him, throw him in the back of the police car. And I don't know if he was talking shit. I'm assuming he was. And then the cop just got pissed off and was going to taser an unarmed, handcuffed person in the back of his car, just because he didn't like what he was saying. But he mistook his taser for the gun and shot the guy in his leg. So I don't
so-
buy any
Well,
of that.
let's
So-
go back a little bit. From the beginning of the story, somebody trying to...
Was this at an ATM or was
Yeah.
this in the bank?
I believe it was at an ATM.
Right, somebody trying to withdraw
So-
$500,000 from an
Yeah, so-
ATM, you know that there's probably some sort of mental health issue going on.
Yeah.
But on top
Right.
of that, like,
So
why
what-
is that even illegal? Like, you don't get the 500,000,
Yeah.
and you go on your way.
Well,
Why is that?
look-
Why do you have to be arrested for trying?
No, I don't think they tried it for... What was the charge?
I don't even remember.
It couldn't have been, like, how would they even know?
Somebody called the cops saying that the guy was disorderly and probably intoxicated. So when the cops showed up, he didn't.
Acted
They
disorderly,
didn't like. Yeah, they
intoxicated.
didn't like how he was responding.
Yeah, so
to
he's
them.
already handcuffed in the back of a car, so there's no reason to tase him in the first place.
No, you just get in your car and you take him to jail for
Well,
whatever
unless,
it
of
is.
course, you're a pig.
Yeah. So this
and,
guy didn't
you
like
know,
what
you're
he was
a fucking
saying.
tough guy.
So-
and wanted
So
to
best
leave.
case scenario, he wanted to torture him,
Yeah.
even though he was already
Right. You're a pig.
Honestly, bro, I think I don't buy the whole mix-up when these cops do this. I don't buy it. So I think imagine this headline: cop shoots unarmed handcuff suspect in the back of his patrol car.
Yeah, that doesn't play well.
That doesn't play well.
No,
like
it
that's
doesn't.
going to be
So the-
international news. And then here, I mean, it's just a lot softer headline to say, "Oh well, the cop
so this-
mistakes
Right, he looked for an
taser
excuse.
gun." Yeah,
The cop lost his
It's a
fucking
poor
cool.
excuse. Exactly.
He got fucking pissed off,
Exactly.
lost his fucking, probably acted the same way he does on the street, and just fucking, that's it, man. I'm fucking done with you. And
Yeah.
pull out his gun and try to execute this fucking kid.
Yeah.
And figured he'd get away with it by using the excuse.
Well, there were 3 separate incidents where people committed suicide after being in the back of a police car with their hands
Right.
behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and they somehow pulled out this gun that the cops hadn't found when they were handcuffing them. And I think the cops at this point are like, that just sounds too stupid. We're gonna have to pretend like we're using a taser.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great.
Use common sense, folks. Come on.
So I believe that's all the articles for today. Yeah. We got any events coming up? So, an update on Circle Park. They were supposed to open it at the end of last month, so we were going to get back to doing some good over there, and they extended the closure. We were so surprised.
And unfortunately, they in our neighborhood there are 2 other parks. One was demolished while they rebuilt it from the ground up. It's, and then the other park where we could actually go and share food in a public space was closed for maintenance. There's no actual maintenance going on and no reason given.
there's no maintenance, and there were kids there playing basketball who,
Right, and then mothers and their children, little children.
which is a common thing that the people in the neighborhood use the park. And guess what? They can't use the park either now.
Yeah.
So
So they made sure that in one of the neighborhoods here in Las Vegas that there is no recreational facilities, while people are out there screaming about having kids that are couch potatoes, and all they want to do is sit in front of the TV or play video games.
Yeah.
Every opportunity for them to go to a basketball court or to a running track or be outside has been removed. There's no safe spaces now.
Yeah.
You want them to play in the street? I don't know.
And it's already been closed for months, and now they extended it. It was supposed to open November 30th. They extended it to April something, so it's just
Right.
5 more months. Like, that's crazy. I wonder what they're doing. Like, their excuse was for the initial closure that they were putting down herbicide and that they didn't want anybody getting sick from the chemicals they're putting in the grass.
But there was no signs that they put down herbicides, and that's a common thing because they don't want people walking their dog there. They know that there's a possibility of getting.
Yeah.
It's not like they gated it off. They put like a little rope that you could step over,
Yeah.
and there's
So-
a wall that you could actually hop. If you're trying to be quick about it, and would never see that it was roped off.
Yeah.
So they would warn people so they wouldn't get sick. So that
Yeah, it's all
didn't sound
bullshit.
legit.
It's all bullshit.
That didn't sound legit at all.
It's all bullshit, and it's bad for you. Yeah,
Which
so it's
they
5
could-
months. I don't know.
they could tear Circle Park down and move it a foot over and rebuild it.
Listen,
And
they could take.
and it wouldn't take them till April.
Listen, they could take Circle Park and make it a triangle in less than 5 months.
Yeah.
They
don't know
can
what
make
they're
it a
gonna-
hexagon
I don't
in
know
that
what they're
amount of
gonna do.
time. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, who knows? But they're probably going to put down some cement or rocks to make it less
Yeah.
inviting.
And then they'll complain about all the cardboard that's there that people put down so that they can lay on top of the rocks.
Yeah. So we got a few minutes left. Thank you all
Do we
for
really?
tuning in.
Wow, man. We're
There's
doing
one
good.
event I wanted to bring up here, the Las Vegas Brake Light Clinic. I think it's a great idea that they do this. If you got a brake light out, you can get your brake light fixed for free. People volunteer.
So then you don't get
bring
murdered by the
supplies.
cops for having a
Exactly.
bad
Right.
The whole purpose is to reduce encounters with police because we see they just killed somebody the other day over a moving violation. So if you got a tail light out, definitely get it fixed. Could
Right.
save your life. Who knows?
You do everything you can to minimize your interaction with the police
Exactly.
to stay safe.
This is December 8th. It's a Saturday it's from 12 p.m. until 8 p.m. Saturday, December 8th at UUCCLV. That's the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Las Vegas. It's at 3616 East Lake Mead Boulevard. They're just a great church. They have allowed us to use to store water there. Water and Solidarity can store water there when we were doing our work during the summertime. So they, I believe they're going to be doing, taking up money, raising money for Food Not Bombs as well. They're just really good group that does really great work. And this just goes to show another good thing that they're hosting here, Las Vegas Break Light Clinic.
Right, that should be on our website, right? I mean, if you need to get, because I know when you're sitting here listening to this bullshit, you're not sitting there with a pen being like, oh, we're going to give you some addresses and you're all
Yeah.
steady ready. So
Let me
we'll
share
post
it.
that. We'll
Yeah,
share it on
yeah.
our site.
I'm going to share it right now.
And you don't have to remember the name or the date or the times or the address. It'll right be there. Just check our
there
website.
It is there.
Look at that. See, we take care of you guys.
I haven't talked
But
to
I want you guys
Universals.
to take care of us too. Remember, this is what we do. There is no nobody gets paid here, but we do have expenses. So if you could find it in your heart and in your wallet, and make small donations to us to keep us up and running, and maybe even improve. I'll tell you what. The first person that donates $25, I'll shut my mouth for the entire show. And that'll make a lot of you guys happy.
So
I'm
50
willing to
and
do
it's
that.
2 shows.
Exactly.
25,
Good.
you
You
said.
can
See,
buy
look at
fancy
this.
press passes too.
Yeah,
see,
so
Hey, that was great. What was that?
That's the gong. That's the happy gong for
Yeah.
every time somebody donates. Yeah.
I
I
did
like
want to
that.
mention,
Ring the
I
gong.
haven't talked to the Universalist Church yet, but they're probably going to let me sacrifice a goat in the name of Baphomet in their parking lot. So
You-
they're a really
listen,
good,
they-
open,
they do the
inclusionary
pagan-
church.
They have a pagan festival there every year. I think it just happened. They're all inclusive. So they are. I mean, I've been to the pagan festival there, and it's pretty cool that they're allowing this.
Get all the
in their
vegans to
par-
protest me now.
Yeah.
It's just very socially conscious, very welcoming of everybody. I mean, I went up in there and they had like a Black Lives Matter flag. They had a pride flag. Like it's not like going into a Catholic church. You know what I mean?
kinda
Where
like
it's
Almost
yeah,
like Christianity's supposed to be.
yeah, it's awesome. So definitely check them out. Thank you all for tuning in. I think that's all we got for you. Are we doing Food Not Bombs Sunday?
That's to be determined because of the closure of the parks.
Yeah,
But we'll put that out. We'll post it out there.
yeah.
I have to do this, man. At the sound of the tone, it'll be 4:36.
That was fucking impressive.
I know. I love that. I'm going to
Alright.
play with this all the time now.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
See, that's the